So I'm sure a lot of you watching this video is going to already have seen the video uploaded from RandomGaminginHD on Nvidia's 8800 GTS 512, and if not, I suggest you probably go and check that out, because it's probably going to make a lot of the things that I'm speaking about in this video make much more sense. But when that alert pinged onto my phone and I watched the video, it was just after I hit render on a video on my own 8800 GTX, the original daddy CUDA and the actual GPU that I've been using about 10 years ago in a work capacity. But after watching that video, something was not sitting quite right with me. I looked over my benchmarks, and since both our channels were benchmarking it using a Haswell based Core i5 processor, the same amount of RAM, and because of the lack of DirectX 11 support, the game scope was similar as well, the GTS card, normally a tagline used for more budget focused cards, was keeping pace with my GTX, and in some games tested it surpassed it. So let's take a quick walkthrough of my benchmark results. First up, I'd run Far Cry, the original from 2004, and it returned a very healthy average FPS of 126 with minimums well over 100. Next up was Half-Life 2 on the highest preset, and the GTX returned just under 130 FPS on average, with minimums well over 100 again. Next was the original Crysis run at 1080p on the medium detail setting, and it was generally a decent gaming experience. Yes, there was a bit of stutter, but the averages averaged out about 47 FPS, and the minimums hovered in the mid-20s. So the question I had was, how could this 512MB 8800 GTS match my supposed top of the line 768MB 8800 GTX? Well, when it was released, the GTX was far and away the fastest single GPU solution you could buy, being faster than a pair of 7900 GTXs in SLI. So at the time, its speed was not in question. It brought unparalleled performance, and it was positioned at a price that, while expensive, it was actually attainable. The range was bolstered by lower tier GTS models, the 320 and the 640, which refers to the amount of VRAM available. Now the GTX has 128 stream processors, and its 768MB of VRAM sits on a 384-bit memory bus. The GTS models, the 320 and the 640, they shaved down some of those stream processors, which allowed for them to be sold at a lower price. Now, just before the dawn of 2008, about 18 months or so after the original GTX launched, Nvidia released the new 8800 GTS 512. Now, the big difference here was it wasn't just a case of Nvidia removing the 320 and 640 and replacing it with a sort of in-between card. No, this was a die shrink. The original GTX was built on a 98nm process, and this GTS, it dropped this down to 65. Furthermore, unlike the previous GTS cards which had some of their stream processors removed, the GTS here came with a full complement of 128 stream processors. The only thing that differentiated it from the original GTX was that slightly lower amount of VRAM and the fact it was on a 256-bit memory bus compared to the GTX's 384. So combined with a faster clock speed and the architectural enhancements, this gave the GTS a raw power that was comparable to the old GTX card, and the only thing that constrained it was that 256-bit memory bus. And as we've seen, the performance can match the 8800 GTX, and in some situations even surpass it, when the VRAM limits are not being hit. The difference we see in, for example, Crysis, where I get a few more FPS, are instances of more memory intensive situations where the higher bandwidth available on the GTX card starts to shine. So all in all, what shouldn't be a surprise to anyone these days, this is just another example of Nvidia releasing a value card in spitting distance of the top of the line card a year down the line. Think of it as the same situation we can see now with the original GTX Titan XP and the 1080 Ti. So back to the 8800 GTX, a GPU that completely changed not only PC gaming, but also helped push GPU into the mainstream. Now it seems like a kind of sad note to leave such a great card on. Being overthrown by its son is something more akin to an episode of Game of Thrones rather than a tech channel, but its legacy, it didn't end there. As I've mentioned, the 8800 series introduced CUDA to the masses, and this started a long-term strategy that continues to this day. The Nvidia co-founder has been quoted saying that when they introduced CUDA technology, they had no immediate value, but they made the decision to include CUDA in everything going forward. and this is why the cornerstone that was the original GeForce 8800 GTX went down in PCMR history as one of those legendary GPUs. So while yes, the king was dethroned in the hearts and minds of many gamers by its own son, nothing could match the impact it had in the industry as a whole, and even to this day, I don't really think we've seen a GPU that's had such a big impact on the industry as that 8800. So what can we take from this little look back? If anything, it highlights two things. Firstly, the importance of knowing what you're buying in a used market. There are numerous examples where what seems like it should be the alpha dog, with its GTX tagline and larger amounts of VRAM, is surpassed by something within the same series of cards. So it's essential that you know what you're looking for when you're buying on the used market. And secondly, don't be afraid to go for a GPU which isn't top tier. Take satisfaction, like the owners of that GTS card would have done 10 years ago, knowing that somewhere, someone spent a whole lot more money than you did, and is going to be sitting there with pretty much exactly the same performance. Anyway folks, I hope you've enjoyed this somewhat unconventional look back at my own much loved 8800 GTX. Sure, it looks a little battered and bruised, but we've been through a lot. So tell me what you think of the 8800 series cards and the impact they had on gaming and the industry as a whole, and if you think the industry is progressing in the right direction today. Anyway folks, thanks for sticking around for this look back, take care, and I'll catch you soon.